I'm just not going to touch it. Be wary here. Thank you, Peg, and thank you to all the readers tonight. It's really been inspiring to listen to your work. So by the time my father was 9 years old, he had lost his mother in childbirth to his youngest brother, and all the fingers on his right hand, and much of his hometown to Allied bombs. He was a child of the Third Reich, and the son of a doctor who was deployed to Weimar to work in an army hospital there. And his family was one of millions of Mitläufer, Germans who went along with Nazism, who reaped its benefits and later its consequences. And all my life, I was fascinated and aware of the paradox of my father, who is a kind and gentle man and told me openly about the tragic and conflicted stories of his childhood. But whenever I weighed the suffering of his early childhood against the enormity of the Holocaust, I came up empty. Nevertheless, I was fascinated by his stories, and I wanted to write something about them, but I didn't know how. Now, in 1942, my grandfather remarried a woman who literally answered an ad in the newspaper, and she stepped in to raise his 3 sons while he went off to the front. And when the Red Army started to close in from the east, my grandfather deserted his post, and to escape west to his family. And on the way, he hid a packet of letters from that woman, that young woman, his new wife, in a wall in an attic in Thüringen. And there they stayed for over 50 years, or about 50 years, when a couple renovating the house found them, and they eventually made their way to our family. At the time my dad and I started translating those letters, I was a new mother myself. And I was the mother of a child who had become mysteriously ill and was hospitalized many times. And the scared and hopeful and pained voice of my grandmother spoke to me, and because it echoed my own emotions, and I began to see a way into this story that I had wanted to tell. I could write about my grandfather's complicity in this pathological society and their fiercely protective love for their children. I couldn't answer the paradox of my father's life, and I think of paradox as contradiction taken to a sublime or extreme degree. I couldn't answer it, but maybe I could deliver it and let readers experience it and decide for themselves. So in the scene I'm about to read, the novel's heroine Liesel, this new stepmother, has been told by a doctor that her middle son, Ani, is going to be sent to an institution called Hadamar if his mental condition doesn't improve. And she remembers that name, Hadamar, from the days that she worked at a Nazi spa. So often the meetings in the spa's private room were military in nature, this or that campaign, the giant oak table overflowing with maps and atlases, the names of Ukrainian towns, Balkan towns. Liesel was so accustomed to tuning out these conversations that she heard the name Hadamar several times before she realized the man was talking about the city near Limburg, and he was talking about children. The hope that he might be some bigwig in education made her drift closer, peeking through a crack in the wall to get a good look at him. She harbored dreams of getting her teacher certificate and running her own kindergarten one day. Powerful men came to the spa. Perhaps this one could help her get a scholarship. The man at the front of the room was tall and almost bald, with an unsmiling mouth and dark eyebrows that arched sharply downward. With expressionless eyes, he rattled off a set of figures about the cost of long-term mental patient care in the current German system. 2 words stuck out to her. He said them often, and each time with a kind of detached pity, the way one might talk about a hopelessly broken machine. Minderwertige Kinder, inferior children. Liesel watched transfixed as he turned on a projector and showed his film of the boy with the fish feet and the toothy, blank-eyed girl. The twisted human visages made the viewers grunt and look away. Matches flared as the officers lit cigarettes. The movie went to a black screen with the word Hadamar, and then a camera revealed a long ward filled with beds, a tall brick building with arching windows. Hadamar was not a school. The man was not an education official. Her doctor, someone said, and queried about the likelihood of parents releasing their children to the state asylum for treatment. The doctor smoothed his tie. A questionnaire is being prepared that will soon go out to all public health officials and mental institutions. A qualified team will evaluate the answers and determine which patients must be admitted and which terminated. But what about the parents? The questioner persisted. Surely some will protest. Irritation flashed across the doctor's face. Procedures will be implemented to ensure parental compliance. Liesel pulled back from the crack and strode away. She found a table close to the stage and listened with fierce concentration to her friend Uta's songs, hearing Uta's sensuous phrasing, every flat and sharp note. Liesel stuffed herself on Sachertorte. Everyone understood that the Reich's future depended on a strong and able population. These decisions about human potential were best left to Germany's superior doctors. Yet Liesel couldn't help feeling as if someone or something were following her all day. Whenever she looked back, she saw blank sunlight. Hadamar. She vaguely remembered the Bishop of Limburg later protesting the euthanizing of patients at the institution and that the deaths had been officially stopped by Hitler's own orders. But what had they done to those poor children in the film? She would never hand Annie over. Unable to sit still even at night, Liesel wandered dry-eyed and cold through the apartment after the boys and Uta were asleep. She plucked up pillows. She looked behind curtains. She searched the cellar, staring into the sauerkraut vat, wishing it could tell her what secrets it had heard. She told herself that she was still looking for whatever Annie had eaten, but she also peeked in high places where he could not reach and cleaned the dust off the curving moldings with her finger. She stood on the black velvet cushions of Susie's Biedermeier chairs to reach even higher. She shook out all the fabrics, the rugs, the curtains, speckling the moonlit snow with dirt. She washed the walls one night, all the way to the ceiling, watching the clear water run over the back of her hand. Her nocturnal activities made her tired and cross with everyone, the baby for tearing apart a bookshelf and scattering the volumes all over the floor, Hans for abandoning his brothers to play with the Dillman and Winter children, Uta for telling Liesel again that she allowed the boys to run all over her. Why didn't she just lay down the law? Only Annie escaped Liesel's ire. He'd become almost heart-wrenchingly obedient, his blonde head appearing at her elbow every morning, asking how he could help her that day, and she'd think, there is nothing wrong with this child. Yet later she would find him in the kitchen, begging some invisible person not to lock him up, or at the stove trying to melt an iron pan to make shackles for his ankles, and she just wanted to fold him into her arms and fix him with all the love she had. Surely the asylum wouldn't admit Annie if he improved. The boy was eating better now, and his color was coming back. If Dr. Becker saw Annie again, he would have to rip up his form and let them go home, wouldn't he? If, then. These bargains she played with herself. She'd been playing them for years, as if she were the one who held the power and not him, and not them, the state she'd once worshipped because it had paved over the ache of her homesickness and orphanhood, because it had justified her running away from home, from a conventional life, to be an independent woman. Motherless, fatherless, Liesel had woken every morning in that first year at the spa, lifted her eyes to the Führer's portrait hanging at the Kinderhaus, and pledged him her service. In return, his brown eyes offered her protection and a kind of benevolent severity. I trust you to be a good girl, he seemed to say, to keep your virtue. And she had, knitting socks for his soldiers, nurturing his officers' children, watching and nodding at anti-Bolshevist films in the evening. She couldn't name the day it started to change, maybe the afternoon she'd met Frank, or maybe eavesdropping on the Hadamar doctor, or maybe when the quiet, gentle piano player disappeared because he was rumored to have Jewish blood. Maybe it was the first air raid siren or the 10th. Her pride started to leak away, and in its place grew fear.